Humanity's ancient warbeasts lunged for the alien invaders' throats, razor teeth gnashing, as the stench of blood filled the zoo enclosures. The aliens' laser rifles unable to stop the lions' savage ferocity. In desperation, the Lemnorians found themselves fleeing a species they had planned to easily enslave. Terry Hicks, veteran Bronx Zoo lionkeeper, had been finishing his morning rounds when the massive grey saucer descended, blocking out the sun like a total eclipse, shadow engulfing the entire zoo. He was knocked off his feet by the shockwave of the spaceship's landing thrusters. Alarms wailed as camo-clad reptilians with laser rifles poured down the ramps, their language a chorus of hissing consonants. "What in God's name?" Terry said, struggling to his feet. One grabbed a woman by the arm, shoving her forward as she screamed. Another fired a net launcher, ensnaring a man trying to run. Terry ducked behind a dumpster, pulling out his cell to dial 911. No signal. He watched in horror as the lizard men began herding people at gunpoint into electrified cages dangling from hovering platforms. The invaders were treating humans like livestock on an alien ranch, as if they planned to domesticate the entire human race. Surveying the quickly filling cages, a tall lizard in a black uniform barked orders into a wrist mic. This was a world-ending crisis, an existential threat targeting all of humanity, aiming to strip away their freedom and dignity. An alien conqueror set on turning Earth into a plantation, its dominant species into a slave race. But they had landed in the one place where humans still commanded ferocious beasts of the wild. Terry had to save his fellow humans by any means necessary, even if that meant unleashing the savage predators under his care, the kings of the jungle, as unlikely soldiers in the first battle of a new war for humanity's very survival against an advanced alien foe. Terry sprinted through the mayhem, dodging plasma bolts and alien corpses as he fumbled with his keyring. With a click, the lion habitat gate swung open. The pride emerged cautiously at first, then bounded forward as a laser blast scorched the dirt near them. Terry watched in awe as a massive male leapt onto a Lemnorian, 500 pounds of rippling muscle and fur, making short work of the soldier's armor as fangs found throat. All around the zoo, Terry's co-workers were doing the same. Tiger's stripes blurred as they pounced from the undergrowth, dragging invaders to the ground. Grizzlies reared up on hind legs, plasma fire pattering off their shaggy bulks as they swatted Lemnorians like toys, leaving twisted bodies in their wake. Hippos barreled through the chaos, trampling aliens and biting massive chunks out of the survivors. The tide was turning. Earth's wildlife, savage after eons of evolutionary arms races, were slaughtering the high-tech invaders. Wazen's forces were in full retreat, completely unprepared for the ferocity of Terry's unlikely army. He glimpsed Wazen through the melee, the towering lizard roaring orders furiously as his troops fell back. "Everyone keep opening cages," Terry bellowed to the other keepers. "We've got them on the ropes." But Wazen was no fool. "Switch to projectiles and high explosives now," the commander snarled in accented English. The Lemnorians dropped their energy rifles, pulling out kinetic weapons and grenade launchers. The chatter of automatic weapons fire filled the air. A nearby bear roared in pain as bullets stitched its flank. Hippos crashed to the ground, blown apart by alien rockets. Terry ducked as a grenade whizzed by, cratering a rhino behind him. His eyes met Wizen's across the battlefield. The towering alien raised a plasma pistol, lips curled in a furious sneer. Terry whipped up his tranq gun and fired. The dart spanged off Wizen's shoulder plate. The pistol glowed, ready to turn Terry to ash. He needed a new plan fast, or Earth's resistance would end here. The blazing sun beat down on Terry's back as he crept into the reptile house, slipping past shattered glass and twisted metal. Inside, an eerie calm greeted him, the usual hisses and rustles replaced by an unsettling silence. He made his way to the supply room, rummaging through shelves until he found what he needed: syringes, vials, and a centrifuge. Terry worked quickly, hands steady despite the chaos outside. He extracted venom from spitting cobras, mambas, and vipers, their scales shimmering in the dim light. Tiny golden poison frogs yielded droplets of lethal toxins. With each specimen, the antidote to the Lemnorian invasion took shape. A thunderous boom shook the walls, nearly causing Terry to drop a vial. He cursed, picturing the aliens' hover tanks and mecha suits tearing through the zoo's defenses. Gritting his teeth, he loaded the final dart and sprinted outside. The once proud animal resistance lay in ruins, broken bodies littering the blood-soaked pavement. Terry spotted Wezen barking orders from his perch atop a massive hover tank. Steeling himself, Terry raised the trank gun and pulled the trigger. Time seemed to slow as the dart arced through the air, finding its mark in Wezen's exposed neck. The alien commander stiffened, then crumpled, tumbling from the tank as his troops watched in disbelief. "Fall back," one of them shouted in their sibilant tongue. "The commander is down." But Terry's triumph was short-lived. As the Lemnorians retreated, Wezen's body began to twitch and shudder, limbs elongating and scales spreading like a virulent rash. His eyes snapped open, pupils dilating into inky black pools. With a bone-rattling hiss, Wezen rose to his feet, towering over Terry. No longer a mere alien soldier, he had become something far more terrifying, a serpentine abomination fueled by fury and venom. "You dare!" Wezen snarled, voice dripping with malice. "You insignificant primate, I will flay the flesh from your bones." Terry stood his ground, even as every instinct screamed at him to run. He had started this fight, and he would see it through no matter the cost. Earth's fate hung in the balance. "Bring it on, you overgrown lizard," Terry spat, reaching for another dart. "This insignificant primate isn't done yet." Wezen's mutated form exploded into motion, acid-dripping fangs flashing as he lunged at Terry with inhuman speed. Terry hurled himself sideways, combat instincts taking over. He hit the ground in a roll, sliding under the bulk of a damaged hover tank, just as Wezen's jaws snapped shut on empty air. Heart-pounding, Terry scrambled to his feet, putting the tank between himself and the alien monstrosity. His mind raced. The trank gun was less than useless now. He needed a new plan. A flash of memory, the headline on a zoo press release. Komodo dragons, nature's living dinosaurs. The zoo's latest star attraction, massive, deadly, and right across from the reptile house. Terry bolted, sprinting for the Komodo enclosure. Behind him, Wezen roared, the sound rattling Terry to his core. The mutant alien gave chase, powerful limbs propelling him forward at a terrifying pace. Concrete walls shattered like eggshells. As Wezen smashed through them, his bulk pulverizing everything in his path. Terry ran faster, legs burning, lungs screaming for air. The Komodo enclosure loomed ahead, a fortress of steel bars and reinforced glass. Terry skidded to a halt at the gate, fingers scrabbling at the latch. It held fast, rusted hinges refusing to budge. A guttural hiss sent icy fingers down Terry's spine. He spun to find Wezen looming over him, the alien's frame filling his vision. Wezen reared back, muscles coiling beneath iridescent scales, ready to strike. Terry threw his weight against the gate, one last desperate heave. Metal shrieked. The gate burst open. Terry dove forward, hitting the ground hard. Two dark shapes exploded from the enclosure, powerful tails lashing. The Komodo dragons, each longer than a grown man, charged Wezen head-on, fearless in the face of the alien behemoth. Wezen's hiss became a screech of pain as the dragons attacked, toxic saliva dripping from their gaping maws. They tore into him with 6-inch claws and bone-crushing jaws, their bites pumping venom into Wezen's mutated flesh. The alien thrashed, his tail slamming into the ground hard enough to crater concrete. But the Komodos were relentless, dodging and weaving, always pressing the attack. Terry pushed himself up, ribs screaming in protest. His gaze landed on a length of metal pole, knocked loose in the fight. Snatching it up, he charged at Wezen's flank, a wordless battle cry ripping from his throat. The pole sank deep into Wezen's eye with a sickening crunch. The alien threw back his head, howling in agony. His thrashing intensified, tail lashing out blindly. It caught Terry square in the chest. The world tilted. Pain exploded through him. Terry slammed into the ground, the impact driving the air from his lungs. He lay there, gasping, every breath pure agony. A heavy thud shook the earth beside him. Wezen collapsed, his body a ruin of shredded flesh and oozing wounds. The Komodos backed away, hissing, their work done. For a moment, the only sound was the rasp of Terry's breathing. They had won. It was over. Then a shadow fell across Terry's prone form. He craned his neck up, squinting against the harsh light. His blood turned to ice. A Lemsorian mecha suit towered over him, weapon systems humming as they locked onto the fallen zookeeper. The machine's pilot glared down at him through the translucent cockpit, reptilian face twisted with hatred and triumph. The barrels of the mech's plasma cannons began to glow, superheated air shimmering around their tips. Terry stared down the face of his own death, helpless. In that instant, he knew with cold certainty that this was the end. There was no escape, no clever trick, no last-minute salvation. The alien's finger tightened on the trigger. The plasma cannon's glow burned Terry's retinas as he braced for oblivion. Suddenly, a ground-shaking impact rocked the mech. It lurched sideways, cannons firing uselessly into the sky. Terry blinked, uncomprehending. Panya, the zoo's 12,000-pound African bush elephant, slammed into the mech again. The alien metal crumpled like paper under her bulk. She bellowed in rage, tusks gouging great rents in the machine's armor. The mech toppled, Panya's weight crushing the cockpit into a twisted wreck. The elephant trumpeted in triumph, stamping the remains of the pilot into the dirt. Terry staggered upright, ribs screaming. He stared at the battlefield in numb disbelief. Broken bodies of animals and aliens covered the blood-soaked ground. The zoo lay in ruins, once proud habitats reduced to rubble. A handful of Lemnorians fled in panic, clambering aboard their ship. Earth's creatures had won, but the cost... Pain lanced through Terry's side, cutting through the fog. He glanced down. A jagged shard of alien metal jutted from his flesh, oozing green. Wezen's corrosive blood. It burned like fire. His legs gave out. He pitched forward, barely catching himself on shaking arms. His vision swam. Panya loomed over him, all that stood between Terry and the ground. With fading strength, he dragged himself to her side. Panya rumbled softly. Her trunk curled around him, warm and rough, lifting him gently to lean against her tree-trunk leg. Distant shouts reached Terry's ears, human voices, the captives emerging at last from their cages. There was still a chance for them. He'd done all he could. As the blackness crept in, Terry felt a flicker of hope. The animals of Earth, his unsung heroes, had struck the first blow against the invaders. They'd shown the Lemnorians the depths of human grit and defiance. This was only the beginning. Terry's eyes slid shut. He surrendered to the encroaching dark, a faint smile on bloodied lips. Panya stood vigil over the brave zookeeper's still form, a silent guardian, as the sun dipped below the smoke-filled horizon. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.